Thank you, Ms. Addison. That concludes our public participation. We appreciate all those that participated tonight with their comments. And that will take us to our item for action, item number 13, which are actions as necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session. And we had, actually, all three of our items. Our first is Exhibit A, selected employment items. Do I have a motion on the selected employment items? Mr. Halterwanger.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the selective items discussed and found in Exhibit A.
We have a second. Ms. Hammond seconds. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. The second item we have is the 2017, 2018 reapportionments, reappointments, shown in Exhibit B. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the 2017, 2018 reappointments as found in Exhibit B.
Have a second. Ms. Hammond seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. Brings us to item number 2C, contractual matter. Do I have a motion? Ms. Bumgardner.
I move that we authorize the administration to enter into the design-build contract, that contract construction company to move forward with the Chapin Middle School addition.
We have a second. Mr. Halterwanger seconds. Any discussion? Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And that brings us to item number 14, which is the first reading of the proposed general fund budget shown in Exhibit D. And we'll call on Mr. Richardson.
Mr. Gant? Board, is this on? Thank you, Mr. Gant, members of the board. Here to talk about the 2017-2018 proposed general fund budget. I am going to refer to some things as I go through this PowerPoint. They're in the yellow book, which provides all the detail, and I'll be glad to try to answer any questions once I get through this. But please stop me as I go through this if you have any questions as well.
Yes, ma'am.
In other words, this is the same as that, but this has some things this doesn't have.
The PowerPoint is what you're looking at on the screen. The yellow book that has the detail behind the information. As you know, I do this on every budget presentation, but I will let you know that really nothing's changed except for the fact that the budget information that we currently have before us is as was passed by the full Senate on April 4th of 2017. The budget that the Senate passed has actually gone back to the House. More than likely, the House will have some amendments to make to it and send it back to the Senate. We'll assume that they will not agree to everything in there, so I'm going to say we're going to probably have a conference committee which will actually hammer out all the details on this budget before it's all done. And there's approximately 3 weeks left in the legislative session now, so hopefully within the next 2 or 3 weeks we're going to have a passed budget. This budget also has an increased base student cost. As you recall, all through the House version, we were looking at $2,400 base student cost. The Senate has actually added money to the EFA and provided us a base student cost of $2,435. Here's some of the changes, and I tried to highlight those in blue so you'd know the differences between what we've talked about earlier in the last 2 or 3 meetings where we've talked about the budget and what's actually going on right now. Like I said, the Senate appropriated an additional $31.2 million to the EFA that gets our base student cost up to $2,435. The health insurance premium increases that you see there have not changed. At the time, let's see, where are we? Okay, EIA appropriation has increased for our fringe benefits for teacher salaries. The other thing that's changed here is the amount of money that was going to the Abbeville equity districts for capital improvements was reduced by $54 million. That was originally $100 million. They also changed it to include all districts in the state. 80% of the districts in the state, the high poverty districts in the state, which is about 80% of our districts, receive about 70%, or will receive about 70% of the funding, while all of the other districts in the state will receive, approximately 30%. The pension reform bill is currently still out there. It is, I believe, in the governor's hands, if I'm not mistaken, right now. I'm not sure if he's going to sign it. He has 5 days to either sign it, veto it, or it becomes law. That was done last week, so we're probably closing in on the 5 days there. Those are really the changes from the last time that we spoke. Here's some of the considerations for this budget and what you see included in here. The Senate did change. Let me back up. As part of the retirement increase, I think originally I told you that we were going to be having to pick up an additional 2% of the cost for the employer retirement contributions. The House came through, passed an appropriations bill that actually reduced it to 1% for us, and they gave the other 1% directly to the South Carolina retirement system. The Senate has changed that and put the 2% contribution increase back on the school districts, but they've also provided some additional funding to go along with that, although it will not cover the entire amount that we're going to be on the hook for. Some of the other things, obviously, is the health insurance increases that you'll see in here, step increases for all of our eligible employees. I'm going to draw your attention to that we're proposing that we eliminate all the school fees associated with core academic advanced placement classes. That is also included in this yellow booklet under the fee schedules. And you can see which particular courses that we're looking at eliminating those fees. Also in this fee schedule is an additional fee that we're putting on for technology. This is in lieu of the device insurance requirement that we've had district-wide for those students who accept district devices. We're asking that for grades 6 through 12 that we add an additional $35 fee, do away with the insurance requirement, thereby letting those students who happen to be on free and reduced status the ability to either not have a fee or pay a reduced fee and still receive a device. But all students in grades 6 through 12 would be paying this fee regardless of whether they accept a device from the district or bring their own.
Mr. Gams, can I ask him something right
Ms. Hammond has a question.
I get it, it's in lieu of that. Is this on? I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Would we still, as a district, carry insurance if they're damaged? You know, in other words, not that the student has to pay the insurance. I just wondered, because as a teacher, I know, you know, it does happen, and I just wondered if we as a district have insurance to replace one that's broken or torn up or...
Great question. We've had some issues with the insurance this year. Quite frankly, it's taken too long to get the devices back, so we're actually doing a couple of things. One is trying to bring some of the repair ability in-house. And then for those devices that we're unable to repair, and we're sending our folks through training and everything on this, but for those devices that we're unable to repair, we're going to try and we're going to bid locally to try to find somebody who can repair those devices for us, in lieu of taking out an insurance policy like we've done the past several years.
And I can tell you, I mean, I imagine with any kids, but middle school kids are unusually rough with them. you know, that, I'm like saying iPad, I mean, we've got the hard covers, but it does happen. And so we do the insurance in another district where I teach, but it's really been beneficial because it covers it when that kid, that sometimes they get it stolen, you know, not at school. It's sad, but out of their home. So I just was thinking we need to be covered, even though we're not making the child pay the insurance. I'm just saying, I'm glad we're doing something to replace those that get stolen or broken.
Well, we're basically self-insuring is what we're going to be doing. But yes, we're going to still offer those opportunities, although it's not unlimited. I mean, we still have some instances currently where we have kids who may break them 4 or 5 times during the year. Well, obviously we can't tolerate that. But another thing that we're looking at, just so since we're on the subject, is a little bit more, I don't know, a device that's a little bit more sturdy than what we've had. So hopefully that's going to help too. And we've actually had some of those in the hands of kids and seem to hold up a little bit better.
Thank you.
We also, in this budget, have some additional staff, which I'll get to in a later slide, but this is to meet all of our board policy requirements for student-teacher, easy for me to say, right? Student-teacher ratios, federal and state requirements for IDEL, and all the other federal requirements, and to increase the safety and well-being of our students and staff. We've also got in here some increased costs for terminal leave payout because the Terry program does end in June of 2018. We're not expecting any increases in our energy budget, and we are looking to upgrade our district energy control system to help make us a little bit more efficient in that area. Here are the staff additions that I talked about on the previous slide. We've got behavioral specialists, special services program specialists, and 7 new teachers for a cost of $770,773. We also have in here some additional support staff. We've got a hearing officer, a nursing support assistant, 1 school choice secretary, 2 safety officers, and 2 technology infrastructure specialists for a cost of $392,480. And then obviously the big increase in our budget is for the terminal leave, for Terry, the step increases for all of our eligible employees, and of course the fringe benefit costs that we spoke about earlier that are increasing.
Mr. Kent?
Ms. Hammond.
The behavioral specialist, is that psychologist for certain schools, or that's the district level and they share with all our schools?
Ms. Hammond, that's a position that's not specifically a psychologist, though it could be, but it's a person who is really designed to assist all of our students, not just specific special needs students, but all of our students whereby that person could provide some, what we like to consider some early intervention opportunities, some prevention kind of options for students and their families. So that's ideally what that person would do, run across the gamut, would not be assigned to a particular school, for example, but would just simply serve the needs of students across the district.
They could go, they would travel to the
That
school
is
where the
correct.
kids are.
That's correct.
That's good. I didn't know we had that. I think that is needed. And then I'd like to ask where it's nursing support assistant. We do have nurses in each school now, do we?
We do, in fact, have nurses, an RN in all of our schools. What the nursing assistant does is really a little more clerical, administrative, and offsetting some of the day-to-day duties that a nurse would actually have to do when they're seeing students. And obviously, they're not addressing, entering data as need be and doing it in a timely manner. So that would assist the RNs with that particular job function.
And how about safety officers? I just wanted to ask them as I was on the page.
Yeah,
Is that-
those safety officers, what they are ideally designed to do is to do a little more, dig a little bit deeper in terms of our risk assessment, risk management. We have our security side of things kind of well taken care of with our resource
Yeah,
officers.
that's how I wanted to say it was different from that.
Right, but our safety side of that is really kind of emergency planning, prevention, again, on that regard, trainings that we would like to dig a little bit deeper into, doing more of a qualitative and quantitative analysis of safety measures in our district, And so those persons will look at doing those kinds of things in design particular areas throughout the
Like
district.
Intruder or?
Intruder, active
tornadoes,
shooter alerts, all of those kinds of things, exactly. Training our staff and our students in how to be vigilant in those areas.
Okay, so all of those things are new for this year.
That's correct. We're doing some of those things, but we need to do a little bit more of that. Right.
I agree.
The total of all those changes is $7,384,691, which is, equates to a 4.23% increase in our general fund budget for 2018 over the current year, obviously.
4.2, is that what he said?
The projected general fund revenue has changed since our last meeting, because I've got a little bit better feel for what the value of a meal will be, and that's helped the situation a little bit, which I'll get to a little bit later. But right now, we expect at the current millage level, our local tax money to be $62,295,387, which is the big item there. And then, all told for local revenue, we're looking at a total of $66,110,200. The state revenue has also changed since our last meeting, primarily due to the fact that there's been additional $35 added to the base student cost and a little bit better projections on the state fringe benefits allocations that we expect to get from the state. So, we're looking at projected increases in the state fringe benefits of about $1.8 million, which is a big help, and about a $2.86 million increase at EFA, for a grand total on our state revenue of $109,564,060. Also on here, and I just found this out today, as a matter of fact, well, Friday, but we actually got an official letter today, but the Tier 3, property tax Tier 3 relief funds that you see there of $30,509,345, we were actually sent incorrect amount, and it'll be approximately $12,000 more dollars than what you see there, which we will change for our second reading of the budget.
Before we go on, you want
Skip.
questions now? on
Probably,
the slide, or
That's what
you
he
want-
said.
yeah.
Now, my green light's on, so I want to tell you over there. The increase in fringe on slide 7, does that take into where's that 2% that may show up or may not in the required contribution to the employee retirement?
It'll show up in that state fringe benefits line.
Okay. So does what you present us, is this worst-case scenario that 2% is already in there?
It's already
And-
in there.
And if we don't have to pay the full 2%, then that would be backed out?
It would, but that's only going to be if something changes in the final version of the State Appropriations Act. But as it stands right now, that's what's happening to us.
So we have accounted in this budget for the full 2%.
Yes, sir, we have.
Thank you.
Which, by the way, is more than what's reflected in the revenue. The cost is more than what's reflected here in the revenue.
Always.
Always is, you're right. We're looking at a total right now, as it stands right now, without the additional $12,000 that I just mentioned to you, of $180,183,394. This just gives you a graphical breakdown of what the revenue picture looks like. Obviously, local taxes is the big part of that, almost 35%. And this is just by source. You can see local is is a big part of it, but obviously state is our largest part at 61%. Here we go to the, excuse me, to the expenditure side of things. And the numbers you see here are also reflected in the yellow book, a little bit more detail than what you're seeing here, but we're looking at total expenditures of $181,891,358. Salaries increased by approximately $2.25 million over the current year's budget. Our fringe benefits have increased by approximately $5.1 million over the current year budget. This just breaks it down for you. You can see salaries and fringe are at, 87, 88% of our entire budget. I provide this to you to see how we can calculate the allowable millage increase for the district. Obviously, the consumer price index of 1.26 million. I'm still in dollars here. 1.26%. Our population growth for Lexington Richland School District 5 are projected to be 0.9%, so our allowable increase is 2.16%, which equates to 5.4 mills based on our current millage rate. I estimate at this particular time that the mill's worth about $246,590. Here's where we are as it currently stands. Projected revenue of $180,183,394. Projected expenditures, $181,891,358, or a projected shortfall of $1,707,964. With a 5.4 increase in our 5.4 mil increase would bring in an additional $1.3 million, which would leave us about a $376,000 shortfall, which, based on what we're looking at as far as the non-recurring cost, I feel perfectly okay leaving that as a deficit and using our operational balance to fund that, if it should work out that way based on the final version of the budget. There's some things happening that may eliminate that. I don't know that yet. Just looking at the 135-day enrollment this year, we've grown approximately 200 students since last year. That's going to bring us some additional money in through EFA and fringe that we currently don't have the estimate on what that projection is going to be because the state's not finalized the 135-day yet. Hoping that'll bring us in some additional funds that will definitely at least cut into that $376,000 deficit, if not eliminate it altogether. There's also a proviso that's been inserted into the Appropriations Act based on the Senate, which provides hold harmless dollars to those districts who have been hurt by the index of tax-paying ability, imputed values being used for property tax relief. I do not have that reflected in the budget because I don't feel that good about it. The funding, where it's coming from, may or may not happen, so I don't feel like that we ought to rely on it, but we will take it if they send it to us. But that could equate, they've only put $5 million in for school districts in the budget, when in reality the hold harmless would be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $20 million. So you can see there's a little bit of a shortfall, but even with that additional $5 million in the budget, and should we realize any of it, that's going to be approximately $450,000 to $500,000 for this district, which would also help erode that deficit. Where do we get that money? We're going to continue working on this budget, obviously, until May. We're going to continue to look at all of our salary projections, making sure we've got everything covered. We're going to also work on, trying to update, assuming we get the updated information on projected revenue from the state appropriations. And, so what you're seeing here may change somewhat by the second reading of this budget, but I do not expect it to change very significantly one way or the other. This would be the cost to taxpayers in the district were the board vote to increase millage for every, well, obviously, owner-occupied homes are exempt from any operational tax or tax for operational purposes in the school district. For every $20,000 of assessed value, each meal would cost an additional $1.20. And for each $100,000 of business or other personal property assessed at 6%, it would cost an additional $6 per meal. This is our calendar. Obviously, today is April 24th, so we'll do the first reading of it. We plan to have the final reading and the public hearing on May 22nd.
Okay, anyone have any questions, concerns?
I have a
Sam.
couple. From the Senate and the House, and I know you've explained to us it's gone back to the House, are there any changes that teachers need to hear that it looks like, for instance, National Board Certification? We should address that. I know the teachers that have that are concerned about what's going on.
Well, we had hoped, and we'd hoped the Senate would actually remove the sunsetting of the National Board Certification. However, that did not happen. If I remember correctly, anybody who is currently in the system, anybody who applies prior to the end of next fiscal year will be eligible to receive the salary supplement should they achieve certification. But that ends next year. So I think we've got basically another year to get in, and then after that, it's gone.
So anybody in the middle of it can finish it and then up to that.
That is my understanding, yes.
And as you said, is it possible the Senate could get it, back, and, or you think that's
Well, the
finalized?
Senate's passed their budget now.
So
It's unless something happened, both the House and the Senate agreed
Said
to
it, yeah.
that, so I do not see that actually changing.
And my other one was about as far as, do we still pay a certain amount of SROs for Lexington County? Or does Lexington County, I mean, how much, I couldn't tell from the budget, it's probably on one of these pages. Do we share the cost
We do, actually, we pay 75% of the cost for the
for all?
resource officers
I was
in
just
Lexington
thinking-
County. We're at 50/50 in Richland County.
Okay, that's the one, I thought we were in Lexington, okay. Just checking.
Now, we haven't touched on the yellow book here, but there's some information here I want to point out to you, but I think Mr. Hawthorne had a question.
Yeah, I think I heard you mention about student increase of 200 and something, not included, may not have been included, but the base student cost for those students. Is that what you mentioned? Did I hear
Well,
that?
we've got our 135-day enrollment, and we've grown 200 students since last.
Oh, so
last
we've
year.
grown some?
Yes, sir, we have. The amount that you see projected for the EFA right now only includes approximately 150 new students, which is what we had at the time for 45-day. So those numbers will be updated.
And let me say, you look a lot better than you looked about 2 months ago.
I feel a lot better than I did about 2 months ago. Thank you.
Mr. Camp,
Mr. Cates?
you forgive me for some new guy questions. I was comparing the book you gave us on March 27th and the book for tonight. It's about a $2 million plus or minus
Yes.
reduction in that budget. That was good, but I was just curious where those reductions were realized, if there was any one significant place or how that came about.
Well, great questions, as a matter of fact, and I had that in my notes to discuss and went right on by it. But we've done a few things. We've gone out, we've looked at all of our categorical funding. If we could get salaries out of the general fund into categorical funding, we've done that. Make sure that we're using every bit of that. We may have overdone it in one case, but that we're still looking at that one. We have reduced the amount that we had budgeted for some of our security, and it's mainly due to us not having as many crossing guards as we had budgeted for last year. We've reduced the number of crossing guards. That's a pretty significant amount of money as well. And there were a couple of other things that just escaped me that we've done. Hold up, bear with me. Oh, and we have gone in and reduced some other accounts where we just saw that we were actually over budget. So it's spread out all through there, but we have done that as well.
And that kind of brings me to a question. I'm comparing budget to budget. Will we be able to compare budget to actual expense?
Is,
So that is, we're projecting, I'm comparing to the last budget, but will we be able to compare to what was actually spent?
I'm going to try to answer your question, I think. Well, in the yellow book here, you can see where we've actually gone in and put the actual expenditures for 2016. Those are audited numbers, obviously. We don't have the 2017 numbers
Right.
yet. So does that answer your kind of
So that's the column 2015-16
Yes.
actual?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then amended is when we amended that budget for 2016-17.
That's the budget we're currently operating under right now where, and on the monthly financials that I give you, you see there's a line in there for budget transfers where schools may be transferred between accounts. That's what the amended budget is. There are a couple things that, unless you have another question, that I wanted to point out to you in the yellow book. Obviously, that we've got the detail, a little bit more detail in there, comparing last year's revenue to this year's or next year's projected revenue figures. The same with the expenditures. We've got the supplemental salary schedules in here. And there is one salary schedule that we want to draw your attention to, and I'm going to ask Dr. Jakes, if she doesn't mind, to talk about that one a little bit. But this is supplement schedule for special duties, which is on the last page of the salary supplement schedules.
What you see here is a summary. In the past, we had two separate schedules, one that would have been for high school supplements, one that would have been for middle school, and we've combined them here, and we're proposing that we move away from a step system where you would receive a certain level of compensation for your first year sponsoring an activity all the way up to the top level of experience, and going with the more traditional approach of having a flat supplement. We've actually studied the Midlands, and what we're going for here is the market rate for these supplements. Some of the amounts that we had were arbitrary when we compared them to our competitors' surrounding areas. And so what we want to do is to be fair and to be attractive, but at the same time not to overcompensate, not to undercompensate. So we've really simplified this by going with that market rate that we researched. In implementing this, a couple of questions may come about. For example, if you were someone who sponsored the newspaper and had reached that top level of compensation, but you see now that we're offering less than that amount, are you going to be penalized? The answer is no. If you were already receiving a certain amount, we certainly wouldn't want to reduce your compensation. We would freeze you at that level. However, if you were not quite at the market rate and let's say had been undercompensated as a first or second year sponsor, you would expect to get that market rate. So this is something that we've looked at, we've talked about, and after conducting the research and vetting this internally, we're prepared to bring this to you as a recommendation.
Thank you, Dr.
Good
Jakes.
question. Ms. Hammond?
Yes. I think that's great that you're looking at this and comparing it and maybe finding a very equitable way to do it, because
Yes, ma'am.
I hear that from teachers. I had a question where it's got department heads. Excuse me. The language arts, math, science, social, the core courses I see is 5,000. Then other content areas, if they're department head, is 2,500. Do you give, if we have a department head and they're paid the stipend or whatever we call this, do they still get a period of their class, of their day, that they don't have a class, one less class than, say, another teacher, so that they can get these things done?
They do not. We actually made that change last year.
Yeah, that's what I
And so these amounts have not been amended. These are the amounts that we amended last year. with your approval, and we have removed the unencumbered period, and that allows us to increase or to maximize
hours.
that expertise of that teacher's time and energy.
Did you get input from teachers that that would be a rather for them than having the work of being a department head on top of having,
We
same
communicated
number.
through our principals, and so we really received very little feedback in terms of that not being positive. Because we increased the amount slightly, teachers were very positive
Good.
in their reception to that, so we did not have any complaints or any big issues at any of our schools.
because I definitely see the reasoning, and I understand it, and if they were making less because, I mean, if you're a teacher, one more class to teach and do this is a larger, more responsibility as well as time consuming.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the other, I guess, I was really interested in, I think that word equitable is the most important because teachers really do, and they talk to teachers in another district, So I think it was really smart to feel like we can say as a board and that our policy is in line so that they feel that they're fairly compensated. Because whatever these teachers do extra, they're never paid enough. So but at least it shows that we know that they're doing extra work and they deserve money for it.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Jakes, just to piggyback on that first answer on the department heads, wasn't there an added benefit too that we actually gained more use of a classroom because we had more teaching time in that classroom? So there was a
Win-win.
compounding
It's
effect
win-win.
to that too. But, as I remember, I know you all worked hard on that, but I remember it pretty well accepted. And I do remember years ago, a proposal like that, it wasn't very well accepted. In fact, it ended way before we got to a final stage with it. So I think there was an added benefit of space, not only the teaching person, but the space in the school too, so.
Yes, sir. A number of benefits occurred because of that change.
Any other supplement questions?
I've got a couple more things I want to point out to you,
All right,
if that's
great.
okay.
Keep pointing those really good things out, Mr. Richardson. We like
These
that.
well, I don't know, it depends on which side you're sitting on, I guess, well, the next couple, if you think they're good or not, but on
Athletics.
on the fee schedules, I want to point out on page 2, 3, and 4, I believe, you'll see the $35 technology fee for grades 6 through 12. And then beginning on page 5 through the end of the fee schedule, you will see all of the proposed fees to be eliminated for 2017, 2018.
Mr. Kent. On,
Mr. Cates.
on the fees, just to be clear, because I was a little confused from a previous meeting, we talked about eliminating all AP fees. That was only on what's considered core AP. So, for example, the 2D design, 3D design, AP art, history, those will all continue to carry a fee.
Yes, sir. When last year, when we eliminated all the core academic fees across the board except for AP, we had a formula that we used to try to make sure that we replaced or backfilled all of those funds that schools were going to be losing. So we've done that through the general fund. So perfect segue. If you'll flip over to the other schedules, you'll see the amount that each school is getting on a per pupil basis for supplies to replace, obviously to continue what they had and to replace all of those fees. When we eliminated the core academic fees for the current fiscal year, the amount of money that we were providing to districts to replace that also included AP, but we did not eliminate the fee. So we're not requesting any increase in what we're providing to the schools. We're just asking that we eliminate the fees now for those AP courses.
Ms. Hammond.
This is kind of a general question, though, about where, on page 5 of the 13, you've got in red, like eliminate. So anywhere it doesn't have that, that's a fee because it's a special course.
That's correct.
Okay, now I got a question. Say like, animal science. Does that correlate to, do we have the barn up and running? And is
Barn's
that,
up.
would that, well, I'm curious because I'm thinking, do we have that in all of our high schools, or that's only at the Kate, at the,
To the best of my
Jackson.
knowledge, that's only at the
right?
center.
So it would be, but I was just curious when I read that, because I thought about that would probably be a larger fee if, for something with the barn, just because we were gonna borrow animals, right? We don't have to buy any animals. I'm just trying to check on that. We hadn't talked about the barn.
I think they're getting
It made me think about it.
they're lending them to us, I guess, right?
Right, yeah, we're borrowing. But anyway, anything special like that, because some of these, to me, $50 seems to be the high, no, excuse me, Auto Tech's 100. I was thinking that seems so high compared to all of them, but,
Well, a lot of the Kate fees are $100.
yeah, that's pretty,
And one thing we added, and I'm glad you asked that question, because one thing we added this year, because it was a little bit confusing to me too, is, but if you'll look on the right-hand side of every page, you can see where that fee is charged. So in other words,
Oh, I
Chapin
see.
High School,
Yeah,
Dutch Fork,
Irmo,
Irmo,
okay.
Spring Hill, or the Kate Center.
thank you. I see, I didn't see that. I got it. So parents and kids are well aware, they have their little fee booklet that they know when they sign up for these courses.
That's
in our-
correct.
yeah.
But these fees have not changed. The remaining fees have not changed.
Okay. Now, can I go to a page we hadn't talked about? Or
Certainly
you want to
may.
finish that page?
No, you
Mr.
certainly may.
King, yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about the information that was provided for the per pupil funding amount?
Did we have any major changes on the, athletic director, all the coaches are named? I mean, not named people, but the job and they do get the step,
Up to,
different than teachers.
it's up, well, it's only through
It's like, well, it says step and then it's up to 14, is that what that,
14, right.
that's for? Say, if I've been the baseball varsity head coach for 14 years, I keep getting more every year I'm
You're topped out. when
topped
you-
out. Okay. How do we come up with these? Do
Well,
we
the-
do the same as, Dr. Jakes, had she looked at the other stipend?
Actually, she did that last year. She did quite extensive research on coaching supplements last year. Do you want to?
Did you do comparison there, like to the area?
What we found with the coaching supplements is that across the Midlands and across the state, that steps are the preferred norm, that is competitive, and that's the culture that you would expect with more experience, that you would receive additional compensation. So we're able to look at that as well and ensure that we continue to be competitive there.
Thanks. And most of them teach. If you're a coach, they teach.
We do. The majority of our coaches do teach, but we do have some employees who are called out-of-district coaches, and they would be people who are not employed with us full-time, but who do receive coaching supplements.
Thank you. I wanted to ask that. I've had people in other, ask me in our district, can you coach in our district and really not be a teacher in it? So we can. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Mr. Gann, I did have,
Okay.
just so I can understand this, the accounts starting on page 2, basically the 120 accounts. The first one is 121, educable mentally handicapped on through. There's just some wide swings in funding amounts there. And at first I was concerned because it looked like we were going to way underfund those accounts. And then there was one that, I think it was speech maybe, that had a big increase. Is this just reflective of the way federal, state requirements, how did that come about?
Got ahead of me a little bit. I was going to try to point this out to you. One of the things that we've really tried to do this year, or going into next year especially, is to make sure that we have all of our people classified correctly, based on the student population that they're serving. In the case of special ed, what we've done is allocate the salaries based upon our current enrollment and how those students are classified, although I think there are going to be some changes because the majority of obviously, the special ed students we have are speech. But those kids are also being served in other areas. So we're going to probably have to reallocate that at some point, but this is right now based upon our current student enrollment and how each student's classified. And if you look, I mean, all throughout this document, you're going to see a lot of, big swings, and that's basically for a number of reasons. We're trying, like I said, we're trying to get all of our employees, not just teachers, but all our employees in the right account. Whether or not they were in the right account this year, probably not, but that's why you see us having all these wild swings in where salaries are currently. But overall, we're not reducing any of the funding.
Mr. Gant, I have one more question. It's a general question.
No, good.
You know, hopefully we're just that little smaller amount off than we started with. How yearly do you decide or compute the amount you're able to put in our fund balance? Do you do that after we've done the budget and you know what we were short? Because if you're short, I know some years we've used it, some years we've not. I know the importance of it. That's not my question. My question is, how do you advise us as far as, and how, when in the budget process do we know any overage that can go in there and try to keep in there?
You talking about as we go along?
Yeah,
through
as
the
we go
year?
along.
Okay,
I don't mean right now at this minute. I mean the process over the years, because what do we have in there now?
In our current fund
Mm-hmm.
balance, restricted and unrestricted, approximately
Yeah,
34 million, approximately.
And I know it's not to be used for reoccurring, I understand all that. But I do want to know when we're doing the budget, because over the years, we've had overages we could put there. And I'm wondering when and how, what process in the budget do we determine there's any to put there for the rainy day?
Well, that's really not done. I'm going to try to answer your question. I'm not sure I'm going to answer it the way you ask it, but that's not really something that we don't sit here and
Figure
try to
that.
budget additional or have a surplus on an annual basis. I mean, that's not something we try to do. We try to have a balanced budget. So we don't intentionally try to put money into our fund balance. But however, if we underspend or overcollect, obviously, that's where we see
The savings.
the increase in our fund balance on an annual basis. But I mean, I monitor it as we go all year. Obviously, we have to look at where we are cash flow-wise. This time of year, we're fine, but, you start getting into October, November, December, and we're cutting it pretty close because, our expenditures are way greater than any money that we're bringing in. So we're always monitoring it, but quite frankly, until we get,
Till you
towards
finish
the
the
end
whole
of the
process.
year,
Yeah.
we get a good picture of where we are.
And Mr. Richardson, I understand the important, that it's not really there in the budget to be looked at, only like if you needed it. It keeps our rating high as far as the credit rating to have a certain amount in there. And ever since I've been on the board, we've always kept an amount in there. That's important. It's kind of like a savings. But my question was, I was trying to learn in the process how we, when in the process we know we have some savings and we put it there. I guess that was kind of my question.
Well,
how it grows.
That's typically not done during the budget process. It's done really once we're closing the year out. We start having a better picture of where we are. And quite honestly, we don't know, because it's just a snapshot in time. As of June 30th is what our fund balance that you always heard referred to, that's just a snapshot. It fluctuates on a daily basis. But, as we get towards the end of June, first part of July, I'm going to have a pretty good idea of where we are. That is all I have, Mr. Chair.
You mentioned something a minute ago I was going to go back to, and that was the additional funds that may be generated because of the growth, student growth. Mr. Hartsmark mentioned that, about 200 students that we've grown this year. I know we grew some last year, and that's good news in a budget. And the better news is we have 200 more students, and we had some more students last year coming in. And I know as a staff, you all are looking at, we're talking about an operational budget now, and I'm sure that's why some of these positions that we saw added have come about. But as a staff and a school board, that also tells us that just like prior to 2008, we had a bond referendum, we had over 2,500 students in portable classrooms that bond referendum enabled us to get out of that. And we're having some of those same good growing pains. I mean, it's a good thing to have as student growth. I'm making a statement more than a question, so you don't have to study it. But I guess I'm really saying as a staff, and we've had public comments here tonight, we know that we're very over capacity in a number of our schools and a number of the areas. So as a staff, I know you all are looking at ways through the operational budget, how to have the teachers and keep our student-teacher ratios correct. And then down the road, hopefully, we won't get back into the portable classroom business. Although I did notice the other day at our great community involvement celebration, there are 5 or 6 portable classrooms at Dutch Fork Middle School. And there are a number of them in our faster-growing schools. So the good news is we're growing. That's going to cause us to get a little more money. The better news is we get some more great students in this district. Families are still realizing the great value of School District 5. But it's something that we'll need to address again. The building program that took place took kids out of portable classrooms all over this district and tried to get them in better facilities. So I guess I'm just saying it's good news all around, but it's a community effort to continue to stay on top of that. And I applaud Dr. Hefner too. We're proposing relief in the Chapin cluster. However that turns out, the relief is needed. We're going to have that somehow. So I'm glad they're adding a little more to the base student cost. It's not nearly where it ought to be. I'm glad we're growing by some students because I think a school district that grows shows a lot of positive effect. And I guess I'm just on a little bit of a soapbox here. I think it's a good thing. And I know the staff works at it hard. I know that's why we make recommendations and move forward on these things. But it's good news all around, I think. And I want us to continue to address it on a daily basis. I don't want us to ever, this district, I hope, won't get back in a situation where we neglected to address the growth and wind up with 2,500 plus students in a portable classroom somewhere. And I know we're not trying to do that. So, and again, I'm mixing two budgets. I'm mixing an operational budget and a capital budget. But
Well, the operational budget has to keep up, and since you brought it up about the growth, we have planned for growth in this budget. I think the projections showed a growth of approximately 180 additional students. We grew a little more than what was projected for the current year, as a matter of fact. So, hopefully we've got enough built in to handle those additional students for next year. That's always it's always an issue, I guess.
that was a great effort. Any other questions or comments about the budget? Well, this is first reading. And we, did you, Mr. White?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one observation. It is much better than I guess we're looking at or we're thinking at the first of the year. But the thing that I want to remind the board, all these cost increases, that they'll be here and again next year with additional cost increases on top of it. So we're in this sort of this continuous, compounding, and we need, layers of revenue they're going to return, because you can't pay these bills year after year as they continue to increase. But it's refreshing that we're so close this year, and it's been closer than it has been in some of the previous years that we've had to deal with.
It is, and I hesitate when we start initially talking, but I feel like you need to know what, at least at that point in time, what our worst-case scenario is going to look like. So I know it looks bad, and then we get better as we go. We get better information, and hopefully it doesn't get worse from what I said. So I'm always happy when it's not quite as bad as what I originally given to you. But I still think you at least have to know what the worst-case scenario could possibly be.
Great comments, and I think I appreciate your cautious approach to it, Mr. Richardson, and most of us been on this board a while, have had those years when it looked bad, and it continued to look bad, and we were delving into a reserve fund in large chunks. So we have been through some tougher times, but I'm hoping nothing changes drastically in the next few weeks, but it's been a good process.
Mr. Camp,
Ms. Hammond.
on that point, and I know Mr. White's right about looking forward, and we're lucky if it stays as good as it looks, even though we'll be a little short. But last year, we were able to, not raise taxes, and we gave a one-time bonus to teachers. So we have it, I think we can look at that. I mean, we have had every year has not been totally bleak, So you did a good job last year.
Well, I wish I could take credit for it, but that was the state.
But I understand what Mr. White's saying. Costs are going to go up with everything, just like it does in a home. But and then I wanted to ask, when you mentioned about it is the crowdedness is our Chapin Elementary area, but if maybe I'm wrong, Dr. Hefner can tell me. I was thinking we've lost some at Chapin Elementary, but Lake Murray is overflowing with so many. They have the most portables, correct? I mean, is that correct? Was that fact right? I mean,
They have probably
large-
the most students in portables now. They're certainly the most overcrowded.
Right, that was my
But
question.
we also have students in portables at Chapin Elementary. I didn't bring those figures with me tonight. As you know, Lake Murray has crossed the 1,000
Yes.
student mark, and I was at Chapin L on Wednesday of last week, and they're approaching the 750 mark, which is, they have the capacity for that only because we left portables there a couple of years ago. So,
Well, it definitely is the growth. It's the growth area.
well, and again, I'd point out, we have growth other places than Chapin. Harbison West is above capacity. Seven Oaks is above capacity. So we have growth throughout the district, but certainly on each end of the district.
And then, but then on our end, on this end, we have a couple of schools losing.
I believe they're up from this time last year, although
Enrollment.
we do have, I believe, two that are between 450 and 500 students.
Is that Lee Park and Nursery Road?
That's right.
We'll keep up with it.
All right, if there are no other questions, we need a motion for first reading of the proposed general fund budget. Do I have a motion? Ms. Baumgartner.
I move that we give first reading approval of the general proposed operating budget as shown in Exhibit D.
Have a second? Mr. Halterwanger seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Richardson, all the input. The next item is item number 15, which is second and final reading approval of revisions to Board Policy IHAC Social Studies Education, shown in Exhibit E. I would entertain a motion. Ms. Hammond.
Since I teach social studies, can I do this one? Second, and I would like to make a motion that we approve second and final reading approval of revisions to Board Policy IHAC Social Studies Education as in Exhibit E.
Do we have a second? Ms. Baumgartner seconds. Any discussion on this policy? See none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. Brings us to item number 16, which is first reading approval of Board Policy IKE, Promotion and Retention of Students, shown in Exhibit F. Do I have a motion? Mr. Halterwanger.
I move that for the first reading approval of the revisions to Board Policy IKE, Promotion and Retention of Students, and proposed new administrative rule IKE-R, Promotion and Retention of Students, located in Exhibit F.
Have a second? Mr. Cates seconds. Any discussion, any question? See none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. That brings us to item number 17, which is first reading approval of revisions to Board Policy IKEA, acceleration of students, and Administrative Rule IKEA-R, shown in Exhibit G. Do I have a motion? Mr. Haltwanger.
I motion for the first reading approval of revisions to Board Policy IKEA, acceleration of students, and Administrative Rule IKEA-R, acceleration of students, located in Exhibit G.
Do we have a second? Ms. Hammond seconds. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Ms. Hammond?
It says to establish, that we'll have it if there's enough interest by students and parents within the program. Do we offer it at one high school for the whole district? Or if there's enough, do we have two?
Ms. Hammond, direct me where you are. Are you talking about
Okay, I'm
social
on-
studies, or are you
No,
talking
no,
about?
no, I'm
okay.
on, about just summer school. I thought, unless I'm on the wrong, I thought that's what we just said, summer school. And it's on page,
Exhibit G?
You're in, that's.
am I
H-
in the wrong exhibit?
Yes, ma'am, we're in.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But summer school, it is summer school.
That's the
That was my
next- that's the
question.
next one.
Next one.
You want to hold it till the next
I'm one ahead.
That's
Oh,
good.
God, I'm sorry, I don't have a question on social.
We just passed an acceleration, you just accelerated.
Sorry, I'm trying to get out of here. Look how much more we got.
All right, we'll hold your question one
Hold it.
second.
Don't pass me when it comes to summer school.
No, we didn't just pass it, we're having
I'm
discussion.
sorry.
All right, any other question, concern, comment on Exhibit G? See none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. And that will bring us to number 18, which is the first reading of Board Policy IHCA Summer School, shown in Exhibit H. Do I have a motion?
Should I do that one since I've
Ma'am,
messed
Ms.
it up?
Hammond, do that one.
I move that we give first reading approval of revisions to Board Policy IHCA Summer School Exhibit H.
And do I have a second? Mr. Haltwanger seconds. Now, Ms. Hammond, your question.
Thank you, Mr. I appreciate Mr. Gant being kind to me. I'm just curious, because I've had parents ask, is summer school offered just at certain schools, or how do we decide? I know you've got here about interest in, how many there are, like that, then you decide, but what's the procedure?
I think I heard you say first high school, so
Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah,
divert
high
that
schools.
question to Dr. Harris, because he actually oversees our summer school program and our summer school graduation. So, Dr. Harris.
Thank you. Yeah, we have offered summer school for our high school students in two locations. Chapin High School, which will serve students who are from the Chapin High School and Spring Hill High School facilities. And then we also offer in a second location at Irmo High School, whereby Irmo High School and Dutch Fork students will attend there. So we offer the summer high school program in two different locations with the graduation commencing at the Irmo Theater.
And it says schools may charge students a fee to cover the expenses of staffing. Do they pretty much pay for the whole, whoever we have to hire to teach?
That is-
The expense is a wash?
They
Because
do pay per course, and there's a small budget that we have for the summer program, but the students do pay.
electricity and stuff.
That's correct. Mhm.
Thank you. I'm
Any-
through.
Any other
Promise to ask that.
question, concern about summer school policy H? You all keep me on track. We did have a second of that. You seconded it.
Yes.
Okay.
We did.
All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our discussion agenda,